Namo Sakyamuni Buddha. Namo Sakyamuni Buddha. Namo Sakyamuni Buddha.
Thank you. Yeah, Miss Tammy, how you been?
Good.
Happy birthday to your mom.
Yesterday, we have a short discussion about how to recognize our Buddha nature in a religious way, according to the traditional practice. So basically, according to
When should I give mom the note?
one of the sutra, the Buddha said that at first we need to rely upon, let's say, to follow the breath or count breath to recognize the source of our life, that's means the breath, and eventually we would recognize the sensation and the feeling in our body. That's the second step. And the further step is that we need to recognize our thoughts. And of course, it's a long way to go. And as much as we recognize our thought, we would recognize how they pop up and go, and how they swing back and forth between like or dislike. And when we recognize them with that kind of awareness, that we live with that kind of Buddha nature there, that awareness there. Of course, now when we talk about the Buddha nature, yes, we could understand, but we could not feel how it looks like until we calm our mind completely, until we recognize those kind of what they call forces thought. Is that understandable, Thăng Thiền?
Yes, nice.
Yeah, so that is the religious step for us to practice. That's why somehow it requires tremendous practice for us to do meditations, so that when our mind calm completely, we say that at that moment we can be aware of pure nature much easier than now, because now we live with all kind of mental fluctuation and emotional fluctuation. So it's just like we could not see the water on the ocean clearly when we have a wave after waves. It makes sense, William?
Yes.
Yeah, so again, in theories, yes, we understand a Buddha nature, but in practice, we need a lot of times and effort to sit down, to at first cool our mind, so that we could live with that kind of pure awareness instead of playing around with our emotional fluctuation, analytical thinkings. Okay, is it understandable, Mr. Tammy?
Yes, especially after last night, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just move on to our next reading. Yeah, go ahead, Thăng Thiền, please. Let's see here. We stop here.
Okay. Sariputta, the Buddha of the past, used countless numbers of expedient means, various causes and conditions, and words of Sama and parable, in order to expound the doctrines for the sake of living beings. These doctrines are all for the sake of the one Buddha vehicle. These living beings, by listening to the doctrines of the Buddhas are all eventually able to attain wisdom, embracing all species. Shariputra.
This is enough, please. That's enough. Can you summarize that, please?
So what the Buddha say is the Buddha use the many ways, using various causes and conditions and words of smile and parable to show them the teaching of the Buddha, so that they can be able to attain the wisdom. Like that Buddha used many examples. That's the one that can be able to understand his teaching.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, go ahead, John, please.
Right. Shariputra, when the Buddha let the future make their presence in the world, they too will use countless numbers of expedient means, various causes and conditions, and words of simile and parable in order to expound the doctrines for the sake of living beings. These doctrines will all be for the sake of the one Buddha vehicle. And these living beings, by listening to the doctrines of the Buddhas, will all eventually be able to attain wisdom, embracing all species.
Okay, can you summarize, please?
So Shariputra, so when the Buddha about the future like made an appearance in the world, there too was like countless numbers of expedient means, various causes, conditions, and just simile. But
So basically, the Buddha in future, they still use the same ways, experience mean to teach, right? Like the past Buddha. Yeah, go ahead, tell me, please.
Sariputta, the Buddhas, the world-honored ones who exist at present in the countless hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, and millions of Buddha lands in the 10 directions, benefit and bring peace and happiness to living beings in large measure. These Buddhas too use countless numbers of expedient means, various causes and conditions, and words of simile and parable in order to expound the doctrines for the sake of living beings. These doctrines are all for the sake of the one Buddha vehicle, and these living beings, by listening to the doctrines of the Buddhas, are all eventually able to attain wisdom, embracing all species. So it's saying the same thing about the present Buddhas. They're using the one vehicle, but different ways to teach and bring wisdom to others.
Yeah. So in countless hundreds of thousands, 10,000, millions Buddhas then, right? Basically, all Buddhas use a similar approach to teach sentient beings, right? Yeah, go ahead, please, Mr. Thân Tư.
Shariputra, these Buddhas simply teach and convert the bodhisattva. They do it because they wish to show the Buddha wisdom to living beings. They do it because they wish to use the Buddha wisdom to enlighten living beings. They do it because they wish to cause living beings to enter the path of Buddha wisdom. So basically, it's just trying to teach and convert into to show different type of living, the wisdom of to show the Buddha the wisdom of to living beings, and then they also wish to be enlightened. And I think basically it's to enter the path of where they they want to be better with Buddha wisdom.
Yeah, that's important things. The important themes throughout this sutra. That's why the Buddha speak this sutra. He want to activate our Buddha wisdom uh, by showing us how to enter the path of the Buddha wisdom first, and use Buddha wisdom to enlighten us so that we can live with that Buddha nature or Buddha wisdom. Yeah, William, please.
Shariputra, I too will now do the same. I know that living beings have various desires, attachments that are deeply implanted in their minds. Taking cognizance of this basic nature of theirs, I will therefore use various causes and conditions, words of simile and parable, and the power of expedient means, and expound the law for them. Shariputra, I do this so that all of them may attain the one Buddha vehicle, in wisdom embracing all species. So here the Buddha restates the reasoning for the apparently many different doctrines, and it's because the Buddha clearly sees the the desires, the attachments, the habits, the sort of defilements or impurities or obstacles that each person has, or groups or types of people have, and then taking that all into account, the Buddha basically uses anything and everything that he can in order to bring people along to gradually enlighten them so that they can attain the same way that he's attained, the Buddha vehicle, the Buddha way.
So this sutra is emphasized a lot about the experience mean, to be flexible in the teaching so that people could understand the Buddha nature. So in our daily life too, right, William? So let's say some of your patients somehow they could not handle the pain. So how could you comfort them? How could you use some means to comfort them, to calm their mind before or while you're working on them?
Yeah. Well, getting them to be present with just what's happening at the moment, the sensations of the body, the feelings they're having, the thoughts they're having, to be aware of that, and to notice when they're going away from actually what's happening into their story about what's happening. So it seems that we can make things a lot worse by, okay, there may be a sensation that's painful, but then if we think about it, and we think about it in relationship to ourself and the future, and we start to worry about what that sensation means with respect to all of our desires and things we want to do in the future, that's when it starts to hurt on a whole different level. Because now it's not just a physical pain, it becomes a mental, emotional pain, and much more suffering over it. So if they can come into the experience of what's happening in moment by moment. So if they feel a pain, then actually noticing the sensation of the pain, and then noticing any thoughts that come up from it, but not then sticking with it and building a whole reality or story off of those thoughts about the future. But by noticing that they are like that their thoughts, they're going to pass through and someone's going to have different thoughts later, that they can just acknowledge them or acknowledge the worries, but then let them go and stay present with what is. And then even occasionally bringing them to appreciation of what is positive. So if they're so focused on what is negative, I think it's reasonable to just point out some of the easy positive things to remind them of. And so then that can help them let go of the negative a bit. Not to make them say that, okay, you have to constantly try to think about positive things and run away from negativity. But just if someone is latched on to the negative, sometimes reminding them of the positive will help them to let go and become a little bit more neutral. So, and then I think if they were someone who was familiar with Buddhism and was practicing the way, then it would be good to compassionately bring up the laws of karma, and that whatever suffering that they're experiencing now, they're completing a karma, so that in a way it's a positive thing, that whatever happened in the past that led them to have to experience this sort of pain, well, now they're completing that, so in the future they won't have to suffer from that karma still.
So their mentality is so important, right? To determine the recovery process, right? If they have negative state of mind, it's not easy to be recovered soon, right? But if they have the positive state of mind, it's much better for them to be healthy again. So my point is usually, it's not easy for people, even us too. We Buddhists and we practice every day, but not easy for us to remain in neutral route, not just mental. But talking about other people, if they don't know the function of the mind, usually they just swing. They swing either to the positive side or the negative side. So is that hard for you to encourage them to think in the positive side of the equation when it's so painful for them?
I think there is a bit of a challenge, because what I have to avoid is it sounding to them like they're bad or wrong for thinking negatively, and that the pain is their fault because they're thinking negatively. People can very easily hear that. So I try to generally, the way it'll come up is like when I will talk about potential actions that can improve the situation, and if I list off a few different things, and everything I mention, they have a reason why they can't do it, then that really, that makes it easier to talk about, well, baby, I'm speaking, don't do that. That makes it easier to talk about possibility. So it's like, and like kind of they can then see like, well, if we're always focusing on the reasons why something can't be better, and we're not looking for the ways in which we can improve it, well, there's a problem in that mind state, because then it really seems like we're getting something from things being bad. If we're not willing to take some sort of steps, reasonable steps, like meditating 5 minutes a day, is a common one that people will have a lot of resistance over, and they'll have all these reasons why they can't. And so that's usually pointing that out, like, well, if I'll use this example pretty frequently. Imagine someone who's addicted to crack. Crack is kind of a very strong drug that will destroy a lot of people's lives. And someone addicted to crack may not be able to hold a job down or anything else like that, but they're going to be able to get more crack, right? They're going to be able to figure it out because they want to get it. And so any obstacle in their way, they're going to find a way around that obstacle to get it. And so I'll use that analogy of saying, we have these resources in our mind if something is important to us, that we can find solutions around a roadblock. You know, even someone who's in that kind of disabled of a position, that they're kind of being eaten up inside by that sort of drug, they can still marshal their resources and solve it. So I try to get people to see that there's possibility, and if we're denying possibility, then it's going to be very hard to get better. And so it gives them then it kind of puts a little bit of responsibility on them, where they have to take accountability for choices.
Yes, Miss Tammy, yesterday you talked about visualizing contemplating the water, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ocean water, right? So it's just help you let go of all thoughts to be neutral in the neutral ground.
Yeah, it helps the thoughts kind of bounce off, rather than, it helps to kind of just disengage from them, kind of like a barrier somehow.
So as soon as you could let go of those thoughts, you feel more peaceful when you think about ocean water.
For sure. And being able to pull on it, not just in meditation, but any time. So if you get in a conversation or something that starts to, if you can trigger your mind to go back to neutral ground, then it helps pull you back towards that.
Yeah. Yesterday we have discussion about using some types of meditation techniques, as well as the chanting too. The chanting of sutra, the chanting of mantra. Have you tried that one?
So I tried it last night with the kids when I came home,
Mm-hmm.
and it was fine. You know, I played it low, and they were very calm and peaceful the whole time. Their behaviors were great. They just were playing on their own and being very creative. But after a while, so probably about 20 minutes in, David starts going, you know, that sounds really sad, Mama. He said it was sad. So I changed it to something a little bit more upbeat. And he's like, oh yeah, that's happier. So, and then I showed him the music box later on before we went to bed. And so that got him all excited again. So they were playing different ones, and one of them they were all up dancing to and stuff. It was really fun.
You can change the tone, you can change the chanting. Yesterday we gave her the chanting box. It has more than 10, right? More than 10 types of chanting.
Yeah, there's 13 on it.
That's the way we can use any means to calm the mind. So everyone is different. So some of us, we can do the chanting of the mantra, the sutra, do this meditation, and so forth, depend upon our wish, our abilities, and our time too.
I left one on last night as we were going to sleep really low, and David fell asleep right away. And then my 2-year-old, she was kind of struggling, and then at the end she started going home and fell asleep. It was so cute.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so let's move on to the next one. Yeah, thầy giáo Pháp, can you read the next one, please? Sorry.
Sariputta, when the age is impure and the time are counted, then the defilement of living beings are great. They are greedy and jealous and put down roots that are not good. Because of this, the Buddha utilized the power of experience means apply distinction to the one Buddha vehicle and which are told it were 3. So you want me to stop here?
Yeah, I think that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, basically it's this is the 5 to what is the English word tức là thời ngũ trược cái này. 5
Purest.
5 to
Purest of 5 defilements.
5 defilements. Okay. So basically, when depend on the vow, when the Bodhisattva practice, the Buddha choose the Pure Land or the defilement world to appear. So basically, our Sakyamuni Buddha, he chose the defilement world to appear as the Buddha, and therefore the teaching here is way different than the teaching in the Pure Land. And in here, that means he have to turn from one Buddha vehicle into 3 different vehicles. That means the Arahat, the Pasika Buddha, and the Buddha vehicle. So that are 3 vehicles, but ultimately he wants to be one vehicle. So that means the Buddha vehicle. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Easy. Okay. So when teaching, especially the young children, we need a lot of experience mean how to teach them. Have a Miss Thân Tư. So Hannah, she big now, right?
Yes, Tay. She's in college now. She will be entering in her 2nd year.
Wow. Okay. Well, so you feel close to her, right?
I keep what, Tay?
I mean that you feel close to her. She's still at home, or she's staying?
Yes. No, she's still at home. So she's taking one summer courses at home, and she's working in 2 different jobs for experiences.
Oh, really?
So she's doing research. Yes. So
She
yes, Tay.
she work online.
Yes. So one of them, she goes into the office. She helps out in the dental office, and the other job is a research from Scripps Institute. So she does research for lupus. So that one she does it online.
Yeah, the reason why I mentioned about her because as a parents, when she was young, you have all kind of flexibilities to teach her and guide her, right?
Yes, Tay. But now they're older. There's different way of teaching, right? I mean, you can't teach them when they were young.
Yeah,
Before we have to change our method.
yeah, definitely. That's as human, we have that kind of tools of flexibility. Not talking about the Buddha, so he used all kind of methods to teach us. So there's no wrong or right methods, but everything depends upon the needs of sentient beings. So sometimes when Buddhism spread to other country, um, like Tibet, people like to recite mantra. When Buddhism spread to Japan, people like to do meditation. So most of them like to do meditation. So everyone's have different appetites. That's why as a teacher, when it's a Buddhist teacher, we need to guide them according to their levels, to their needs. So do the Buddha. So that's why he mentioned about it. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Thân Thiên, please.
Yeah, more time. Sariputta, if any of my disciples should claim to be an arhat or a Pratyeka Buddha, and yet does not heed or understand that the Buddhas that thus come one simply teach and convert the Bodhisattvas, then he is no disciple of mine. He is no arhat or Pratyeka Buddha. So what he's saying is someone who is claimed to be an arhat or Pratyeka Buddha and does not understand the Buddha teaching, then he is actually not a arhat or Pratyeka Buddha.
Yeah. So you Buddha mentioned, right? If you are my student, you should know my intention, right? Yeah, go ahead, William, please.
Again, Shariputra, if there should be monks or nuns who claim that they have already have attained the status of arhat, that this is their last incarnation, that they have reached the final nirvana, and that therefore they have no further intention of seeking Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, then you should understand that such as these are all persons of overbearing arrogance. Why do I say this? Because if they are monks who have truly attained the status of arhat, then it would be unthinkable that they should fail to believe this law. The only exception would be in a time after the Buddha had passed away, when there was no Buddha present in the world. Why is this? Because after the Buddha has passed away, it will be difficult to find anyone who can embrace, recite, and understand the meaning of sutras such as this. But if persons at that time encounter another Buddha, then they will attain decisive understanding with regard to this law. So here the Buddha's further making it clear about arhats in particular, that if, when the Buddha was alive, if they're unable to accept this law, then that they're not an arhat, because the wisdom that goes along with being an arhat means that they've reached a point where they could also see that once they received this law, that they wouldn't doubt it, that they would believe it. I mean, especially because they had, followed the Buddha so far down the path already. But then the Buddha makes the caveat of that there could be people who are actually arhats after the Buddha has passed, but they don't believe in this sutra just because it's so difficult for people to believe in this sutra, that it's very rare for sutras like this and other great vehicle sutras that living beings practice them and believe them.
So how about the 5,000 Buddhist monks, nuns, and lay people who left the Buddha ascended before the Buddha spoke this sutra?
Mm-hmm. So then they, like he says here, that they're overbearingly arrogant. Like earlier in the sutra, they say, but these 5,000 have already left. They're of small merit and virtue and capable of attaining this law. So he basically, that this passage is saying that no one amongst those 5,000 are actually arhats, that an arhat wouldn't be so arrogant as to think that they had nothing more to learn from the Buddha, to think that they had fully understood the Buddha. That's a position of ignorance, I would think, because they're not in the place of the Buddha. The dragons and the spirits and the heavenly beings, they don't revere the arhat, the person who thinks he's the arhat, the same way, and they don't have all of the characteristics of the Buddha, all of the blessings and wisdom of the Buddha. They're not able to exhibit all of the same spiritual powers. So for them to just say, okay, I've arrived, I don't need to listen anymore to the Buddha, even though the Buddha is the one who taught me so that I could come to the position I'm in, they have an error in their mind.
That's very important. Yeah, for our heart, they don't have any kind of attachment to the self. They are humble. So the story about Shariputra. So one day he was criticized by a young monk. That young monk said that Shariputra, before he left the assembly, they just pushed him to fall down to the road. So that young monk approached and deport this incident to the Buddha, and definitely the Buddha called Sri Puja to see whether it's true or not. So Sri Puja say that, well, I don't have that kind of attitude or action. I always consider myself as a ground. Whoever step on the ground, I can handle. Whether people threw the flowers or garbage on the ground still stable and accept that. And he go on to give analogy about his mind. We symbolize the water. So he said that the water accept everything, whether it's just dirty or pure things, it still accept. So the Buddha say, and then the Shiva Puja say that yes, it's my mind. My mind is so stable. My mind is so peaceful, uh, and I would not have that kind of attitude that pushing someone to the ground without any uh, uh, sin to say, I mean, without apologizing that person. So with that explanation, the young monk who accused him bowed down to Buddha and Sariputra to make repentance. So the reason why I brought up this story, because again, for some arhat, they would not have any kind of arrogance at all. They're so humble because their mind is so stable. They would not despair their own mind as well as look down upon other people. So that's why it's related to this sutra. The Buddha said that the 5,000 monks and lay people, because they were so arrogant, they thought that they have attained something, awakening, achievement, and so forth. And they may think that they would not need to listen to Buddha anymore. So that's why they left the Buddha. So this passage go in accord with the story at beginning that those monks and nuns left the Buddha due to their arrogance. Okay, so that is one of the signs we can see whether someone attend to that state of mind, whether they still have arrogance, whether they still have anxiety, whether they still have anger or craving. That's a sign we can recognize as just common people, common cultivators. But if they spirit humble, if they're really peaceful and calm in manners, in any kind of situation, especially in the difficult situation, um, like when they was abused, when they was falsely accused, but they still remain calm, that's one the side we can see that they have some kind of achievement there. Okay, so
Can I ask a question?
yeah, please.
Yes, I was wondering, 5,000 people is a lot of people to leave at one time. So under what condition do they think that they were okay, that they don't need to learn anymore? Was there like a leader or someone said, okay, you know, we learned to certain things and now we think that we know everything, we left? Because it's not just one person, right? It's like 5,000. So has anybody asked the reason that they decide to all leave at the same time?
Okay, actually, yeah, before I respond, how about you, Thân Thiện? What do you think? You have that same question? What do you think? How can you respond to that question?
The way that they lead, because when Sariputta asked the Buddha like 3 times, and the Buddha refused to teach them the law, and these 5,000 people waited too long, and they're so they decided that it's not necessary to learn. They decided to leave. But these people, these 5,000 monks, nuns, laymen, women, they just don't really think it's necessary to learn. We just move on.
Vì thầy giáo pháp.
Yeah, but what's your question, thưa thầy?
Oh, you know, question of Thanh Từ. He say that. Oh, sorry, Miss Thanh Thư, can you repeat the question one more time, please?
Yes, Tay. So my question is, I was wondering, it's not just one person, but 5,000 people leaving at the same time. I was wondering what's their reason that they feel that they don't need to learn anymore, because is there one leader that, or obviously it has to be something that being said that all these 5 people don't believe it anymore, so they left, right? So that was my question.
Okay. When the Buddha speak the Dharma to the assembly is 5,000 is very little. It's not that many, but because when he speak, it's not only to the human, but to the non-human as well. That means God, dragon, or whatever the being, and also Bodhisattva from all the 10 directions come to listen to the Buddha Dharma. So 5,000 is very small, and in the sutra, the Buddha did not say in detail how they did a leader or whatever. But to me, what I think is when we have the same mindset, and I don't know they have a leader or not, but if when we have that mindset, and we are satisfied with whatever we learn, and we don't think that's necessary to learn any further, then I think it's that how, because the action comes from the mind, right? So if our mind have those things, therefore the action will show. So to me, it's I don't know they have a leader or not, but when we have that arrogance, that self, we just automatically. And also the Buddha said that because their blessing is not much, very little, and they cannot be able to stay. So when we have let's say that when we walk into the good energy, right, environment, if we do not have that kind of good energy, we will automatically, we cannot stay there too long. We will move on. We will find a way to get out. So something like that, describe the energy that they cannot be keep them long enough. They don't want to stay. So due to their marriage, okay, due to their blessing, yeah, they do that.
We I think.
What Tikya Fap definitely, what he said is in the line of what I think as well. I agree that in order to hear that law, they have to have had the merit that matched with it. And I think the mechanics of how their lack of merit shows up is through arrogance. They probably aren't seeing it as arrogance. They're probably seeing it as, because I imagine, if you're in the assembly with the Buddha and you're learning from the Buddha and you're aspiring to achieve arhatship or Pratyeka Buddha, and it's that in and of itself for a lot of people is a phenomenal achievement. Like, I mean, for me to achieve arhatship, that would be amazing, and it would be perhaps a multiple lifetime thing anyways. And so if they're hearing from the Buddha that this goal, which to them may seem even unachievable, that goal, it's just a stop on a much bigger journey. I could see them just not like being able to stay around anymore, just because it could just be like too much. That's how I would think about it, that a combination of those different things. The reason it's too much is because their good roots weren't deep enough, and so they would become confused and doubtful when they were begin to hear this and would ultimately just want to get out of there because their minds couldn't really, match with what the Buddha was teaching.
Well, you miss Tammy, you understand the question? What do you think?
Yeah. And I think how you answered it before was like a college student thinking they don't need to attend the class because they already understand it, even though they don't have a great understanding of it.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that analogy too. As a professor at the university, somehow I encounter kind of situation a lot, especially toward the end of the semester. So some students they think that they understand pretty much about the content of the subject of studying. So they would not need to go to school or to attend the class anymore. Uh, so it is just similar as the assembly of the 5,000 people who left the Buddha. And when we talk about the numbers, so yes, 5,000 people is still a lot. But somehow, if we study about the historical aspect of Buddhism in both traditions, Mahayana and Theravada traditions, most of the time Buddha uh, went with at least 1,250 monks. Most of the time they follow him, not all, but most of the time they follow him. Plus the people and the monks from different parts of the country and so forth. Of course, we would not mention much about celestial beings, God and so forth, because they are invisible beings, so it's uncountable too. But again, I think yes, you have mentioned that clearly that yeah, they don't have good truth and they think that they understand or attend something already, or Buddha mentioned about the Buddhahood or Buddha nature is so lofty, it's so high for them to attend, so they just get up and walk away. Let's put this way: if I go to my class and so my students say, if you sit down to do meditation, one day you become a Buddha, and they laugh at me. Right? It's impossible task for them. So I think it is more understandable. Not talking about when you approach to someone on the street and say, well, why don't you sit down and do meditation? One day you become a Buddha. Again, they may think that we're crazy. And in this sutra, the chapter of no despairing Bodhisattva, so wherever he went, whoever he met, they always say, oh, I don't dare to look upon you. If you practice diligently, you become Buddha. And most people laugh at him. Most people threw the rocks, yell at him, run away from him. But somehow, uh, before he passed away, some of them came and repent their karma. Uh, and, and he said that those people who scold him, those people who threw the rocks to him, and so forth, were the one in the assembly that he tried to teach them now. So again, it's some impossible task, or the ideals is so lofty that people could not accept, that people could not follow. I think that's one of the reasons why they left the Buddha before he even explained to them in detail. Does it make sense, Mr. Thân Như? Thân Tư?
Yes, everybody's participation was very insightful. So it makes a lot of sense to me. Thank you, Tay.
So that's why we have this kind of discussion. So everyone has different view, but when we talk about this subject, we can see different angles. Anyway, so important. Yeah, so important in our Buddhist tradition that whenever we practice, whichever we practice, whether it's meditation, chanting, recite Buddha name, so forth, being humble is so important. Uh, this is a story that a famous Zen master Chile in the, I think in the 4th, 5th century. So one day he met one of his Dhamma brother, that's been the monks that practice at the same time as him. So that monk, he lie down and he say, well, you know, I attend that meditative state of mind. And this Zen master look at him and say, wow, the moment that you mentioned about that state of mind, that meditative state of mind, you lost that state of mind already. You lost that meditative state of mind already. So at that moment, monk, he's so frightened that he stood up and he's calmer. So again, in the spiritual realm, it's go beyond our human thinking. With the thought of arrogance, is block our wisdom. That's why being humble is so important in our life, in any kind of situation too. So it's just, if we don't recognize, it's not easy for us to walk on the spiritual path. You understand, Thăng Thiên? Being humble is so important. Of course,
Yes.
the other virtue is important too, but being humble is one of the most important virtue. You know why? Thăng Thiên?
Yes, Mofatai. It's very important to stay humble so that you can be able to learn the teaching from the teacher. And when you stay humble, you can be able to receive respects from others. And I think that's the only two things I can come up with.
Please tell me, you know the story that the Zen master, I'm a professor, approached the Zen master and asked the Zen master to teach how to do Zen, how to do meditation. You know that story? Miss Tammy?
No.
Miss Thăng Tư, you know that story?
No, Thầy. I would be interested in hearing it. Thank you, Thầy.
About William, you know that story? Oh, really? Okay, so a professor, he teach at local university, and he approached to a Zen master and asked that Zen master teach him how to do meditation. So yes, that Zen master say, okay, just come in and sit down. We have together. So yes, both of them sit down. While both of them will sit down, so the Zen master put the the tea to cup, his cup and the professor cup, until the water spill out everywhere. And so the professor say, "Wow, master, why don't you stop? The water spill everywhere." So at that moment, the Zen master put out the tea and look at the small, and he said, "Well, if you come here with full of calculation, you think that you understand Buddhism too much, so you will not learn much. It's like whichever thing they say, you will not accept that. It's like when the water is full, it's too full on this cups. So whichever water I fill in, it would not be whole. So that's why it's spread everywhere. So that's a lesson for the professors that when we want to learn something, we need to have empty mind. I mean that to be ready to accept teaching instead of being arrogant. Oh, I know already. No need for me to listen at all. That's what happened with that's why thousand people. That's why the Buddha said that they over arrogant because they thought that they understand already. You understand the story, Miss Tammy?
Yes. So since he already thought he was full of knowledge, he couldn't gain any additional knowledge. It just spilled over on him. He wasn't able to take it in.
That's the point. Yeah, that's the important thing. And then in learning anything, we need to be ready. That's why in most of the Buddhist sutra, the Buddha for people to request him at least 3 times before he to do the teaching, before he start to teach them, so that at least they listen and be ready to absorb what the teaching the Buddha want to say. So that's why it's so important. And you know how to teach the little children, right? When they're not ready, whichever thing you say, right, they get them around, right? You would not go into their ear, right? Mm, yeah. So it's work at the same time. So that's why it's so important for us to be humble, to be uh, able to receive the teaching, uh, so that we can enhance. Yeah. You follow me, Miss Thang Tư? There's a story.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Tay. My thing is this. I think if we are living by ourselves and we have a clear mind but not be affected by others, I think it would be easier. But when you deal with day-to-day life, sometimes you think that you are humble and you try to help others, but they don't listen. And then my problem is the patient. There's certain patient that you have, but then at a certain point you run out that patient, and you can't speak that, so you kind of like lose sleep over it. So how do you approach, because like for example, if I was a leader and I'm trying to teach someone and my intentions are well, but yet that person doesn't listen, it and you have to be very creative and finding ways for them to listen to you. And I think that's where it's difficult, right? You are put in a position, like for example, you put in a position you want to help others, you want to teach the Buddha teaching, but if someone else doesn't want to listen, you can't do anything about it until they're ready. However, in my situation is different, is because when you are running a company and you have employees, and when they don't listen, your method is that you don't want to let anybody go because that's the human compassion side of you. But it's very difficult to work with someone when they don't listen. And so you have to be very creative, very patient to find ways to work with them. But at a certain point, maybe the karma is not there and you have to make a decision. So my question is, how do you deal with things like that? Where I know that, let's say if I'm agitated or I get irritated, I will go into meditation to calm my mind. But then at what point, how much can you endure? That's the hard part for me, is that, you talk to yourself, but when it comes down to making decision, you have to make a decision, but what do you do in those cases?
Yeah, it's very tough because you meet them, right? You see them every day, right? And it's
Yes, Tay.
to your companies, right? But for me, I meet my student most of the time till one semester. If they try hard to study, that's great. If they don't want, that's their choice. So of course, in my case, I let go of those kind of people much easy. But yeah, again, depend upon a patient, depend upon the compassion as well as wisdom. Sometimes it takes time, right? It takes time to gain people understanding uh, about views. It's not easy for them to understand us at first, but it takes a lot of times. But still, um, again, I don't have that kind of solution for you, but hmm, uh, as much you show your concern, you show your compassion, and understanding about their situation, eventually they would listen. Of course, sometimes they may take advantage on you, but somehow you may draw a line, right? They're not supposed to step over that boundary. As much as they stay in that boundary, you would accept and try to work out with them. If it's too much, yeah, I think in religious way of life, and sometimes depends situation. If it's too much, then you may need to let them go. Otherwise, may attend to other people. But at least in my own experience of my students, at least I give my students few chances to make up their mistake or to correct uh, their, um, their mistake in writing the paper and so forth. So again, so depend on every situation. It's not easy, but yeah, like you say, it's always to be grateful, uh, the wisdom. You did always to be patient, to be passionate, but at the same time, we need to look the whole spectrum, the pictures of the communities, or in the case, right? They come. So let's say if you keep that person, but somehow it affects you so many people negatively, you need to find some way, either let that person go or find some way to let them one or two more chances before that happening. Reasonable is the thing you think that.
Yes, yes, I understand, and I do that. And you're right. When you sometimes, like, because of your human compassion, sometimes when you're too nice, people do take advantage of you. And there are some that when you're nice, they are very thankful, right? So I think in every person, you just have to look at the situation of each person independently
Yeah,
and deal with that way.
yeah. William, do you have any idea, any opinions about that situations?
I I agree with what you say. I agree with what Miss it's Tong Yung.
Thân từ,
Tong Tu.
TU, yes.
With Tong Yung. Or your tongue too. Yeah, I agree with what you say too, where we have to look at things globally and we have to consider all of the effects. If we just think about, all right, I just want to be very compassionate to this person and I just want to see things only from their perspective, and then we could end up enabling a bad behavior. We could send them a message that they don't have to be responsible for their own actions or their own behavior. So then later, if they're in a different job, we may not have actually done them a service by letting them slide. So I think it makes sense to give them multiple chances, and so long as they are getting better and showing that they're wanting to do better, then yeah, then that's good. Then we get to be a part of the cause of them growing and developing themselves. But if they keep making the same mistake and they just don't care, then yeah, it seems like the best thing would be to not let them hurt the company and other people who work there.
About Mr. Tammy.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, with what everybody's saying. Just from experience, it doesn't seem, usually when you give them chance after chance, it doesn't seem to matter. But yeah, I think it's a good idea to try to do that.
Okay, it's time up now. Thank you. Thanks for your participation. All right, go ahead, John. Can you say Namo Buddha, please, John?
Namo Sakyamuni Buddha. Namo Sakyamuni Buddha. Namo Sakyamuni Buddha.
Thank you. Thank you. So see you next Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you, Tay and everyone.
Thank you.